Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the Citrus Preps podcast alongside Mike Dean. I'm Brett Knutson and we're talking about week 6 of the regular season in high school football. I'll look back at week number 5 and see where everything sits. Kind of unusual, I guess, for week 5. Not a whole lot of district action taking place.
Get started this week.
But yeah, this week we get into it big time. As we start with last week, our game of the week, the Villages at Lecanto. And again, a little bit of a slow start for the Panthers, kind of doomed them as they got behind early and really were never able to make up the ground. And the 2-game winning streak comes to an end, and they sit at 2-3 right now, halfway through the season.
Yeah, they had. Again, the same thing with Chris River game. They had a rough start in the first quarter. They did come back in the second quarter. Defense stiffened up a little bit. Came back to 21-14 at the half, and then just kind of fell apart in the third quarter, and that was it. 42-21 loss for the Villages. Couldn't stop the running game of the Villages.
Yeah, they didn't. But, good signs for Lecanto, and we'll get into what Coach Harper had to kind of say about the mid-season report card for his team. But I thought Ryan Rogers maybe had at least the best game we've seen throwing the ball downfield, deep downfield, which is good. The week before, we saw a lot of those out of the backfield passes and quick ones.
Runs after catches,
which they had success. So I think you're starting to see the offense maybe, tick upwards more consistently. The defense, a slow start, an early turnover doesn't help your defense like that in your own territory. But the defense, I think, has played pretty well. And again, just as Coach Harper will tell us here in a few minutes, inconsistent. I mean, they can get a few 3-and-outs and give their offense a chance, and then all of a sudden a big play gets busts against them. And that's the one thing I've noticed. There's been a few too many big plays against.
Giving up, yes. And I think that's what, but they also live and die with that because they have some big plays too. Ryan Rogers definitely could make some of those plays. Riley Green could really put the ball in the air and make some plays after the catch. So it's really important for them, I think, to start working through this. Coming into, they're playing Lake Minneola coming up.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they'll talk about that. They fall to 2-3 on the overall record, but Lake Minneola is a district foe, and they need to put something on the board here for Lake Minneola.
Yeah, we'll talk about Lake Minneola in a minute, but here's what Coach Harper said and a couple of players as they kind of look through the first 5 weeks and see where they are heading into the final half of the season.
We're not consistent enough, kind of like what you just said. We've had sparks here and there, but we got to be a whole lot more consistent moving into district play if we want to end up in the playoffs.
Going in, we're 2-3. Every day we work hard at practice. We gotta try to keep focus up on practice, and we're working hard to win the rest of the season.
Right now, I definitely like the effort we're putting in. We've been doing a lot of hard work here at practice. Practicing in the hot sun and this heat and this weather, and I really think it's paying off with our effort. But we just got to fix some technical things on the field and some little things that could really take a turn for a worse.
As we talked about, just a little bit of inconsistency. You mentioned before we got into that Riley Green. He looks to me like he's becoming that big play threat deep that Lecanto needs. That's kind of one of the things that they didn't have a whole lot of last year, so I think that helps. District play, as you mentioned, they travel to Lake Minneola, a district opponent that they haven't seen. They haven't been in this district, so it's a whole new look. Not used to seeing this team. Coach Harper talked about maybe the record isn't all that impressive with one win on the season, but the quality of opponents they were impressed by, and they think there's some speed with Lake Minneola, and they're going to have to come out and have a good effort. And same thing for their opponent this week. They don't know a whole lot about Lecanto. And I mean, this is what we talk about when, this district that they used to be in and what Citrus and Crystal River is with Nature Coast and Central and all those. In a lot of ways, A, you're close and you see them all the time, so you know them. But B, I think also it is athlete for athlete how you're stacking up, and there may be one or two difference makers, but athlete for athlete, the playing field is pretty level. We don't know. Nobody. What are you going to get with Lake Minneola? Are they going to be supremely athletic at a few positions? Are they a group of kids that are dominant and big up front? Do they have exceedingly good speed? What are they? And you just got to go out and find out firsthand and see. I think it would have probably helped Lecanto if maybe Springstead would have played them first. Springstead is playing Land O'Lakes, I think, in the other district game. So But hey, they're both kind of fighting the uphill battle of not knowing the opponent.
Yeah, and Lake Meal, you don't know what they have, like you said, and I'm sure they're watching film and they can kind of get some tendencies from that point. I saw some film there. I mean, they're not they're good or better than their record. Let's put it that way. So you've got to watch out for this, and this is something that Coach Harper's got to help to his boys, is that this is a district game, and this is something that can push us into the next level if we can get past this team right here.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. 4 teams in the district, 2 district games coming up on Friday night.
Yeah.
If you're Lecanto and you win it, I don't want to say there's 2 teams out of the 4 that have been eliminated, but it certainly gives you a huge leg up, and it sort of sets the tone for what the next few district games are like. So that becomes pretty big. If you can get that win, plus it would be a road district win, and sets you up nicely. So
and just so you know, we won't be filming this game, so that's what
Coach Harper was very, very happy to figure out that Citrus Preps will not be live streaming. They've not fared well on Citrus Prep, so I guess it's our fault. With the curse of us, that's fine.
Curse of Citrus Prep.
So I mean, if that's will stay away. If that means they win the rest of the year, I'm sure they'll be happy. Also unhappy after last week, a little bit. I think obviously is Crystal River. They go on the road and fall to Springstead. They get shut out. Springstead's a good team. Haven't lost yet this year. I think see as the season goes where they will end up. But again for Crystal River, it's now 3 losses, and all 3 of those losses have not been able to put up a point on offense. They've got to get that cleared up in a big way this week, because it's a district game and it's Nature Coast.
It is Nature Coast, and that rivalry, it goes back a little ways now.
Yeah.
And you were talking a little earlier about inconsistencies with Lecanto. It's the same thing with Crystal River. They go up and down. Offense is not gelling one week, or the defense is better, and vice versa on each one. So they've really got to figure out how they can get all facets of the game played, special teams included, and try to get it up for Nature Coast. I mean, right now, they're tied right now at district point with Nature Coast,
both 1-0,
Citrus, and 1-0. So there's a chance here for them to upset this, or I should say, bring a win back and start that process of getting back into that playoff contention.
Well, I mean, that's sort of the big picture, for Lecanto, and I think you look at it the same way with Crystal River. The overall record may not be what they want, but they are 1-0 in district play, and the next 4 games in district play will decide if they're a playoff team. The one thing that we haven't talked a lot about, because I think it's still new, we're trying to figure out, and you can't really tell for sure, is how the playoffs are going to work. We know it's strength of schedule. We know it's your record, your opponent's record, and your opponent's record. There's some math, and you can always try to play out what you think the other teams are going to do, and those teams who they play are going to do. But I think that the bottom line is, when you get to 3 or 4 losses overall, it becomes difficult to think of yourself as a wild card team, right? Because you have to assume there's going to be a few teams that are going to have 1 or 2 losses and not be district champs, and they're going to be sitting in really good shape. Now, we haven't seen all the math work out, and I mean, you could be a 4-loss team, and when you figure in opponents, your strength of schedule goes way up. But I just think, practically speaking, if you go 6-4 and finish second in your district, there's a chance you're going to get locked out, because I think there's going to be some teams that are going to go 8-2, perhaps even 9-1, and it's going to be interesting. But I think Crystal River, even though they may not be talking about it,
this is the cusp of a must-win kind of a situation.
Yeah, you lose this one, it's going to be difficult to win the district. That would become loss number 4. And you still have to play Citrus. Now, I mean, we've talked about it. This district, to me, sets up pretty simply. It's Citrus, Nature Coast, and Crystal River. Obviously, they've all won a game, which makes it easy to figure out. But I think they've been the best 3 teams.
I agree.
In the first half of the season. And Weeki Wachee, Central, and Hernando have some work to do. And so it's a big one for Crystal River, and if you're going to play your best game, this is the week to do it.
I agree, and Nature Coast is as always, they're stalwart, and they've gone up against them and lost big, and they've won big. So it's kind of like one of those things where who's going to show up for Crystal River this week?
Yeah, and Coach Lowry and the Pirates talked about the challenge, and it's a familiar foe, and one they know they have to be ready for.
we talked about it earlier. Last season, it ended up being Crystal River Nature Coast ended up being the district championship game. Of course, you don't know that in the moment when you're playing in that game, but each game is crucial to our chance to contend for a district title.
District games are a big focus for us and our team and our program. We're doing a lot of extra hard work and practice this week, along with just focusing on the areas that we need help in, like containing our outside guys and everything like that on defense, and then executing really well on offense.
We look at every game as a big game. Even if it's a non-district game, we got to come ready to play and not make mental errors on the field, and everyone do their job and play football.
That's what you got to do, play football and do your job. And, the story you'll see on Citrus Preps that's up, they talk about it straight up. Offenses got to improve. Coach Lowry said, falls on me. I'm the head coach. We got to get this squared away. And, in a lot of ways, these two teams are alike in the sense that I think both Crystal River and Nature Coast don't have the record that they wanted. And they probably have a lot of people from outside this area looking and going, what's wrong with Nature Coast? They're kind of struggling. What's happened with Crystal River? They're struggling too. One of them is going to feel a whole lot better about themselves at about 10 o'clock on Friday night and really make it difficult for the other one to make the playoffs and win the district. So it's a huge game.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, right now you're looking at Crystal River. They've scored 53 points, but they've given up 83. So right there it tells you that's going to be a situation where they got to play some defense. I think this is the key thing. If they can play good defense, give themselves a chance to score, 1 or 2 touchdowns, that's fine. But you got to play good defense against Nature Coast, or they're going to run it through you.
Yeah, you talked about the point. How many of Crystal River's offensive production came in that Lecanto game,
exactly.
too? I mean, I know they scored special teams and defense, but they've got to figure it out and get some consistent play. They've got to get some big plays, but even more than the big plays, you're going to have to put together 7, 8, 9 play drives against Nature Coast. They still have some talented athletes at the Coast. So they're going to have to have their best defensive effort, and by far they're going to have their best offensive game. Totally. One team that certainly has been putting it together piece by piece, week by week. It's been a struggle, I think, but I think they're getting better is Seven Rivers. I mean, the results aren't there, but I think, we talked about it last week. I think Coach Van, sees some subtle improvements, and, you got a chance on the road, All Saints Academy, a team I think that they probably look at and line up and say we can beat them.
We should be able to beat them, yes. I agree with you. Now playing Bronson, they lost 40-20. But Bronson is a 2A school or 3A school. I forget which one it is now, but 2A school still. But, I mean, a competitive game up to a certain point, and they just got worn down. Mm-hmm. They've only got 14 to 15 players that are playing, and they're playing both ways. Not a lot of depth in that team. And, of course, Coach Monty Van's got his hands tied a little bit, so he can only do so much with the players that he has. But a good showing against Bronson and until the end.
Yeah, again, they've shown that they're hanging around, and, I know it doesn't make anybody feel any better, but for three quarters, just about every week, they're right in there with a chance to win. And we talked about the challenges of the depth and the number of players and how it kind of manifests itself and plays out. I think we're seeing it. It wears you out come the fourth quarter, and it also becomes one of those where during the week, I don't think you can ever quite recover and get the rest you need to go back out next Friday. Yeah, so it's tough, but a win will do them some good, no question about that. The Denellen Tigers win again last week. Yeah, they're still undefeated, still ranked number 8 in the state in Class 5A. Back into district action as they take on the Rattlers of Bellevue. Again, it's a week where pretty simply, Price Harris and company should go out and put Bellevue to bed early and win. And what we've seen from Denellen is they have shown a little bit of that killer instinct that you like to see.
Yeah, definitely.
They took care of Forest, and you wondered how that was going to happen.
43-3, yeah, just put them down right there.
Yeah, that's what good teams do, right? I mean, that's what we talk about, Mike. Is coaches like to see. The kids get out there against a team that they are man for man better than. Go dominate them for 2 quarters.
And then pull your starters and get some guys in there fresh.
Get the job done. And, Denellen's one of those teams that has a big enough roster that you can do that with, too. So I think that would be the same thing Price Harris is looking for again this week is get the job done early and get ready. oh, by the way, a side note, you pay attention to that district.
Yeah, exactly.
Vanguard's taking on North Marion, and that
Heard that.
becomes an interesting game, and that's why Dunellan's probably breathing, a little easier. They're in the catbird seat already with a district win over Vanguard. Vanguard, they lost a player who walked off the field, left school. This is just a huge rivalry in Marion County, but it becomes a huge game for the postseason. I mean, I think if you're Vanguard, you lose, you're probably done. I mean, it's going to be interesting. They may be one of those teams that's teetering on that wild card edge.
Yeah, if they win out.
Yeah, but if they win, that could throw that district into disarray. But if Vanguard does win, that makes it real simple for Dunellen. Either way, they would have to beat North Marion, and that's going to be a doozy of a football game down the road. So,
It will be.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one when it gets just a little bit closer. Our game of the week this week, we'll talk about that in a minute, but we'll look back first at what Citrus High did again. They keep rolling, 5-0. I mean, I don't know for sure what the coaches thought about that win over Westport. I know they wanted it. I know they talked about how it was not a good feeling walking off the field a year ago when Brian Maher and Westport lit them up pretty good at home. So they got revenge. It was kind of a back and forth game, but the Canes made the plays late, and they've won close games early in the season, had a couple of breathers the last couple weeks, and then a close one now. So confidence, I think, is real high for Citrus right now.
I'm impressed with Coach Robert O'Brien, how he's gotten these players, involved every single week, motivated every single week, and to see the progression from the first game to now. I'm excited to go watch this team play again, because every week that we look at this team, there's something different being put in. There's something being, taught to the kids at that point in the game plan, and basically saying that, we're going to progress every single week. And they have done that, and Coach O'Brien has been doing a fantastic job, along with Chop Alexander, everybody over there on the Citrus staff. It's really important. I mean, you're looking at three players that they rely on: Connor Bishop, T.J. Weems, and Zaire Wercox. That's their main focus, but that line plays really well, and the defensive line has been playing really well.
Yeah, they've been physical like we always expect, Citrus. I mean, the interesting thing, you look back to some of the games last year, and I think back to the game they hosted Crystal River. That was a game that was winnable.
Yes.
A couple of big plays by Crystal River turned that into a victory for the Pirates. But I think that shows the talent that Citrus had last year, and it just seemed like a lot of things just went against them at the wrong time, or maybe it was self-induced things. The staff has cleaned it up. There is a new energy, enthusiasm, and sometimes you see that come with a new head coach. But you've also got to have some continuity, and you mentioned it. Everybody else on that staff pretty much is exactly the same. So the kids know them, they understand it. The message in most ways is about the same, same teaching points. Obviously, you've got a change in system on offense, and Coach O'Brien knew it would sort of take some time, but I think he likes the way it's developing. And so far so good. You can't complain about 5-0. They've already got a district win, and they talked about this week because it is a big win. They've got their eyes on winning the district, and you've got to avoid losing to a team like Brooksville Central, who really has it all on the line on Friday night.
This is a must-win for them. In terms of the district, they're 0-1 in district. If they want to make it to the playoffs, they've got to win this football game. So for them, everything's on the line, and we got to protect our opportunity to go to the playoffs and continue to look at going 1-0 every single week.
I think as a team we've come together a lot. I feel like that we're actually a brotherhood, and I feel like we all, when we say I love you, I think we all mean it. I think that if anybody ever needed a house to stay at, I think everybody would be like, my house is always open to you. I feel like everybody cares enough and love everybody no matter what.
We just talked about changing our best, and we changed our best, and every game, every week. And for us to get better is just to keep controlling our arc and controlling what we have for our reaction towards whatever life throws at us.
And you hear him talk about little things, and sometimes it can just be a phrase or something that sticks with you, but it makes you focus a little more. We talked about what happened before the season a year ago, and I don't think that group was ever able to get over it, and you can't blame them because it's unbelievably difficult. And I think this year it was completely a fresh start. It was a new season. It was a new coach who knew they needed to kind of get a refreshed attitude, and they've taken that on. They've embraced it, and they've gotten just a little bit more out of everybody, which has made them just a little bit better, because this was not a bad football team last year.
No.
This was a team that had talent. It just didn't come together at the right time, and I think, again, they've taken what they had in terms of talent. They've polished it up a little bit, a couple new philosophies and some enthusiasm. And, Coach O'Brien said to me, look, we've got a favorable schedule early.
Right.
And, this will be, I mean, we're not in Vegas and we're not gamblers, but, suffice it to say, if you were having point spreads on the first 6 games of the season, Citrus would have been favored in all 6 games. But you still have to go out there and win them, and they've done it.
Yeah, they have. And I think it was interesting to hear what they said on it, because that's a word that came up in mind, is chemistry.
Yeah.
A lot of times, when a team is gelling together and being together as a group, and you can hear that they were saying that chemistry just makes it easier for things to happen and be able to do things and be successful. So I think that's a big deal, because last year they went through that problem, those issues, and they had some issues in the beginning and all the way through the season. But they corrected those, and then all of a sudden, like you said, a coach comes in who just tweaks it just a little bit, and all of a sudden, bam, things happen.
Yeah, and the confidence grows, and their opponent, and as we mentioned, that'll be our game of the week coming up tomorrow night. Central at Citrus gets underway at 7 o'clock, so check it out on YouTube, live streaming. Subscribe, like the channel. But, I mean, this is a Central team that started out 3-0 and then has sort of been humbled the last couple weeks. And this is one of those games that I think you got. Yeah, it could be a trap game. And if you're Citrus, I'm sure you guys will talk about it before the game gets underway. Boy, if you can get off to a quick start and get Central down, I think you'll see that. Oh boy, things are going bad again. Because I mean, they got taken behind the woodshed last week by Nature Coast, and that was a feel better game by Nature Coast. And I think same thing for Citrus. Go out there and dominate them. Try to put them away early. I mean, I know that's easier said than done, and it doesn't happen that you just blow a team out, especially in your district. But try to test the will of the Central Bears. How bad do they want to fight, or do they feel like things are starting to slide south on their season?
Yeah, they have the weapons to do that, and that's why I say get up ahead, like you said. Connor Bishop, 35-62, 528 yards, 5 touchdown passes. T.J. Weems and Eric Wilcox both over 300 yards rushing right now in 5 games, and a good average at each one of them. So they can break anything from a 100-yard run to a 2-yard cloud of dust run. So those backs and that line is going to make the difference here going in Central. If you could put them away, like you said, Brett, in the first quarter, it's clean all the way through.
Yeah, on top of it too, it's a run-heavy team. Conte Cason, maybe the best running back in the state. I watched a bunch of his highlights this week, and what impresses me, I mean, number one, he's just a freakishly good athlete. Yeah. He's a heck of a running back. He's got some unbelievable lateral moves, but he also is physical to break through tackles. I mean, he's got the speed and the elusiveness, but he can be physical, and so you've got to tackle him in bunches. You got to have 2 and 3 guys to bring him down, and if you're on point with that, and as I said, if you can get them down early, put them into passing situations where they are not comfortable. But, the challenge is, and Citrus mentioned it too, talking about stopping Cason, they've got a physical line. They've got a very good offensive tackle on the right side who's going to be a challenge. But, if you can kind of take away their bread and butter and make it difficult on them, you have a chance to pick up another win. And, boy, the Canes would be sitting pretty at 6-0, but more importantly, 2-0 in district, and then just to the south, Nature Coast and Crystal River are playing, and somebody's walking out of that one with a loss. So things start to become a little more clear if you're Citrus, who the game is coming up. Is it Crystal River's still a big game, but where is that in terms of the district championship race? You'll know who your team is that you're going to have to beat, because Citrus would already have beaten Weeki Wachee, already beaten Brooksville Central. Coaches don't want to hear it, but I mean, you have to assume that that's a win over Hernando. And then you're going to have a game against Nature Coast or Crystal River, and I think the loser of that game is going to have a hard time kind of picking themselves up. Boy, and those are the last 2 weeks of the season for Citrus, Nature Coast and Crystal River. So that's the way to end it.
It's like a mountain to climb.
Yeah,
Get up there.
and that's that's Coach O'Brien was talking about. We get our confidence early, and then those last two big ones going to decide where we are. And by the way, too, we talked about the other teams having maybe problems making the playoffs as a wild card. If you're Citrus, you got to keep piling up these wins, and then
Just
maybe you've got a little pad at the end of the year in case something doesn't go your way the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yep. Just be for you were saying before about the linemen too. I want to bring that back. Just so watch the linebackers this week.
Mm-hmm.
Linebackers for Inverness are going to be keying on that, and if the linemen and the down linemen for the Hurricanes can occupy those to guards and tackles from coming out and blocking them, that's where you're going to see some stops. And Kaysen won't get that many yards.
Yeah, real quick, just want to there's where you can find us at Citrus Preps on Twitter, YouTube, search Citrus Preps, Facebook, Citrus Preps, and Instagram. Like, follow, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You'll get notifications for when we're live, like right now doing our podcast, when we are live doing the game of the week on Friday night, and that will be again out at Citrus High School in Inverness as the Canes take on the Central Bears. And once again, just remind everybody, here is the action this week. Central and Citrus, our game of the week. Crystal River travels to Nature Coast in a huge one. Big district tilt for Lecanto, their first district game of the year as they travel to Lake Mineola. Seven Rivers is at All Saints Academy, and Dunellen will be at Bellevue. So there's the slate of games. Once again, we will be live tomorrow night. Looking forward to that ball game. Should be a beautiful night for football. We've been really lucky with the weather.
Yeah,
it's starting to maybe cool off a little bit, but no rain in the forecast, so everything looks good.
That's right.
So we look forward to that, and we look forward again to next week on the podcast. You can join us. Looking forward to that, but of course, check us out all week long on the YouTube channel, stories leading up to the games, and then our game of the week on Friday night. That'll do it for us. For Mike Deem, I'm Brett Knudsen. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.